It's my experience that most people live their lives in the wake by hanging on to personal histories to justify their self-defeating behaviors and the scarcity in their lives. They hang on to past pains, abuses, and shortcomings as calling cards to announce a poor me status to everyone they meet within minutes of their introduction. I was abandoned as a child. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an incest survivor. My parents were divorced and I've never gotten over it. The list could go on for hours and hours. Your past is over. By bonding to your past, you not only ensure that you'll be immobilized today, but you prevent yourself from healing. By referring to past struggles and using them as the reasons for not getting on with your life today, you're doing the equivalent of attributing to the wake the ability to drive the boat. This also works in reverse. Many people refer to the good old days that are gone forever as the reason why they can't be happy and fulfilled today. Everything has changed. No one respects anybody else like they used to. $1 used to be worth $1. Now everything is so overpriced. People don't seem to want to help out like they did in the past. When we were kids, we respected authority. Today's kids walk all over their parents. This is also living in the wake and assigning responsibility to the past for why you can't be successful or happy today. Getting out of the wake. Imagine a pencil with the ability to only write your past history. It has no use otherwise. All of your past is in that pencil. Are you going to keep it? What for? Are you going to give it up? Perhaps Omar Khayyam will inspire you with this poem written 1,000 years ago. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out one word of it. You can cry all night about the history in that pencil, all that it contains and all you wish you could erase or bring it back again, but all of your tears can't wash out one word of the past, as the poet-philosopher reminds you. You want to let go of your personal history that's symbolized by that pencil, but when you walk away from it, no matter how far you walk, you look back and there it is. You're ready to be rid of your personal history and to move fully into the present moment, but the pencil is always there when you look back. I suggest that you pick up the pencil and with compassion, allow the words, wounds, and pains of the past to be written, embraced, examined, understood, accepted, and loved for all that you've learned and experienced. The act of picking it up and embracing it will give you the strength to transform the past into song, poem, paint, or ritual if you feel called to do those things, or to throw it away in your unique way. Embracing your personal history. In a universe that's an intelligent system with a divine creative force supporting it, there simply can be no accidents. As tough as it is to acknowledge, you had to go through what you went through in order to get to where you are today, and the evidence is that you did. Every spiritual advance that you will make in your life will very likely be preceded by some kind of a fall or seeming disaster. Those dark times, accidents, tough episodes, periods of impoverishment, illnesses, abuses, and broken dreams were all in order. They happened so you can assume they had to, and you can't unhappen them. Embrace them from that perspective, with help if you need it, and then understand them, accept them, honor them, and finally retire and or transform them in your own way. I know someone who gives them a new job description. Become free to immerse yourself in this moment, the now that's called the present, because it's simply that, a present to open, relish, nurture, play with, and enjoy, and explore. All you get is now. The willingness and ability to live fully in the now eludes many people. While eating your appetizer, don't be concerned with the dessert. When reading a book, notice where your thoughts are. While on vacation, be there instead of thinking about what should have been done and what has to be done when returning home. Don't let the elusive present moment get used up by thoughts that aren't in the here and now. There's an irony to this habit of having your mind drift to other times and other places. You can only drift off in the now, because now is all you ever get. So drifting off is a way of using up your present moments. You do indeed have a past, but not now. And yes, you have a future, but not now. And you can consume your now with thoughts of then and maybe, but that will keep you from the inner peace and success you could be experiencing. It's doubtful that the other creatures waste the present in thoughts of past and future. A beaver only does beaver, and he does it right in the moment. He doesn't spend his days wishing he were a young beaver again, or ruminating over the fact that his beaver siblings received more attention, or his father beaver ran off with a younger beaver when he was growing up. He's always in the now. We can learn much from God's creatures about enjoying the present moment rather than using it up consumed with guilt over the past or worry about the future. Practice living in the moment and refuse to allow any thoughts based on your past to define you. Stop and take notice of all that's in your immediate space, the people, creatures, vegetation, cloud formations, building designs, everything. Stay in the present by meditating and getting closer to the ultimate now, which is God. God is only here and now. Think about this. God will not be doing anything different 1 hour from now than God is doing right now. And God is not doing anything different now from what God was doing 1,000 years ago. The truth is that you can only come to know God if you're willing to be at peace in the present moment. You will only come to truly know God when you give up the past and the future in your mind and merge totally into the now, because God is always here now. Very few people understand and live this principle, largely because of their conditioning and unwillingness to train their minds in present moment living. That's one of the reasons why I sometimes say that it's never crowded along the extra mile. On the extra mile, choosing inner peace and attracting success into your life while living in the present moment becomes a way of being. You can begin by releasing your personal history from your repertoire of available excuses for why you're not living in peace.
The purpose of dancing at a dance floor is not to get to someplace else on the dance floor. Your purpose isn't to end up over here. Like, this is where we're going to end up. So all of this other stuff is irrelevant. Our purpose is to get here. We don't do that. When we dance, we enjoy every single step of the dance, all of the music. And wherever we end up is where we end up. It's just like enjoying a concert. I mean, the purpose of enjoying the concert isn't to get to the end. If that was the case, then the people who conducted the fastest would be the best. And people who wrote only finales would be considered geniuses. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that was fantastic. You see? It's like peeling a banana. You know, the purpose isn't to get to the other end. It's to enjoy every bite. And the same with life. If we, self-actualizing, fully functioning, highly spiritual people, the great teachers are people who didn't do what they did because they were going to make money off of it, because they were going to be approved of, because it was going to be enduring. They did it because it was what their heart told them they had to do. They have no investment in power or control over others. Their life is not about who I'm better than. See, true nobility is not about being better than somebody else. Everybody's better than somebody else at something and not as good as somebody else at something else. True nobility is about being better than you used to be. It's about growing in your life. That's what nobility is. And highly functioning people they're not looking into other people's lives. The last line of Candide, Voltaire's great novel, this whole story of this wanderer, Candide, this great teacher and sort of comic person. The last line, I guess we'll have to learn to cultivate our own garden. Cultivate your own garden. If other people want to grow rutabagas and you want to grow cabbage, then allow that and be independent of that. But so many people live their lives through what others are doing, how well they're doing it. Fully functioning people let go of that. That they have incredibly high energy and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, entheos, the God within. When people say to me, what makes a great speaker? I said, be authentic and be enthusiastic. And it doesn't matter what your content is. People will love you if you're authentic and enthusiastic, if they can see the God within you. If they have no concept of failure, there's no such thing. If you take a golf ball and you put it up on a tee and you stand there and you swing at the golf ball and it dribbles off to the side, you haven't failed. You've produced a result. The question is, what do you do with the results you produce? Everything that you do produces a result. You can call it failure and say, well, I'm not good at this, I've never been very athletic, and apply all kinds of labels to yourself. But we should never, ever allow ourselves to think of ourselves as failures, nor should we ever place that label on anybody else, because you can't fail. It's just a judgment. The only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment. It's just a judgment. And the difference between success and failure is just a judgment. You know, Edison, the great inventor, of course. You know, when asked the question, he had tried 25,000 different ways to invent a battery, and he still didn't have it. And finally someone said to him, how does it feel, someone of your stature, to have failed 25,000 times? He said, failed? I don't know anything about failing. He said, today I know 25,000 ways not to make a battery. What do you know? And every time you do something, every time you go, and it doesn't work, you learn something. And the question isn't whether you failed, it's what do I do with the results I produce. If you pick the golf tee ball up and put it back on there and say, all right, I'm going to correct that, and you do it again and again and again, eventually, if you go through the 4 pathways, if you practice the discipline and the wisdom and the unconditional love, eventually, when you surrender, you'll know how to hit a golf ball. But you'll never do it the moment you label yourself to be a failure. And as we move up from 10,000 cycles per second on your emotional health, we move through the various symptoms of neurosis: worry, fear, anxiety, stress, tension, self-rejection, until we get to a point at point B where we are experiencing an absence of symptoms. However, we know that at any moment, one phone call or one piece of news that is not consistent with what I expect, it's called dissonance. This cognitive or emotional or affective dissonance could literally create in me a state of immobility. So the right phone call or the right action, or somebody having an accident, or somebody not doing what I think they should, or somebody even saying something to me that I dislike, or whatever it might be, and I could instantly go back into 18, 16, 14, and perhaps even 12 and 11 and 10,000 cycles per second. It's been discussed that chronic depression is something that affects as much, I've heard estimates as high as 20% of the population. That people are consuming things like Prozac and antidepressives at an alarming rate. And it's intriguing because there's no such thing as depression. I defy anyone to go out with a container and bring back any depression. The world is just the way it is, and there's no depression in it. There are only people thinking depressing thoughts, and then those depressing thoughts affecting our chemistry, our physical makeup, to a point where we become immobilized. There's no stress in our world. The world is the way it is. There are only people thinking stressful thoughts, and those stressful thoughts become our reality, our detachment from our source, our separation from our source. We start moving away from our source rather than toward it. And as we move in the opposite direction of our source, we find ourselves breaking down, being emotionally immobilized, upset, fearful, anxious, and so on. Now, as I move to my right, on this scale of emotional health, we reach a point called point C. And at point C, at 100,000 cycles per second, we understand the meaning behind Terry Cole Whitaker's title of her book. What you think of me is none of my business. That is, I am living here at a state not in which I am unaffected by, emotionally, the things that occur in my life and in the life of those I love and I'm around, but that I cannot become immobilized by them. I will not allow myself to lose my sense of balance, my sense of connection to God, because of what someone out there might do, even if that someone is very, very close to me, the closest person in my life. I am independent of the good opinion of all of those around me. This is 100,000 cycles per second. Illustrative of it is a story that is told of the Buddha. And everywhere he went, he had all of these followers, but he also had people who were critical of him. And these people would find fault with him, and they would say things about him that were insulting, and they would be very inflammatory, and they would be extremely critical of him. And every time that they would behave in these ways towards the Buddha, he would respond with love, with kindness. That's all he could ever say. And one day one of his students said to him, "I just don't understand. For days and days, these people have been so critical and so ugly in their reactions towards you, and always you still react with kindness and love. How do you do that? How does that work?" And the Buddha responded with something that I think is very, very relevant to our lives. He said, if someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept that gift, to whom does the gift belong? And that was his answer. If someone offers you a gift of their hatred, of their criticism, of their bitterness, of their tension, of their fault-finding, if they offer this to you, but you don't accept it, to whom does it belong? Why, it's theirs. And the Buddha was saying, why would you ever choose to allow yourself to become depressed, upset, immobilized over something that belongs elsewhere? It's not yours. You don't own it. What you think of me is none of my business. I had this really stunning realization one day when I was running, and I saw someone about 30 yards ahead of me who was running. And I was thinking about this concept of the unified life and that we're all one, and seeing the big picture and seeing ourselves as all connected and that we all come from a oneness. And because we're so stuck on our separateness, and I was looking at this runner some yards ahead of me, thinking, how could it be that I am connected to that person? I don't know him. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. How could there be any connection between us? It was like this thing dawned on me that I am already an I that is we. In other words, I have many different life forms on me. In my eyelids, I have thousands of bacteria. In my pancreas, in my ears, and all over me, I have like thousands of these different life forms. And yet I think of myself as a singular unit, but I am made up of a lot of life, a lot of stuff that is alive. So if you can get back far enough, again, it's always a question of perspective. If you could leave Earth plane, and you can only do that in thought, and look down and try to see humanity, you would really see one body. I mean, if you could get away far enough, you would see, and it would look, as you get closer and closer and closer, just like as you get closer and closer with a microscope, into a raindrop. A raindrop looks like a raindrop until you start examining it closer and closer and closer, and then you see whole universes within one section of it that have never even had any contact with the other section of it. And so, well, that's the perspective you have to get on us all being connected. We only see it from this very tiny perspective. Now, how you can apply this in your life is just to remind yourself that just because there's a distance between you and somebody else doesn't mean that there's not a connection. That's the beauty of thought again. It wasn't, an hour ago that someone here at the studio said something to me about her father. And I said to her, well, get me your father's address and I'll send him a copy of one of my books. And she said, oh, he would really like that. And then she started talking about her aunt. And she was doing like a little imitation, and it was really funny. And she said, oh, my aunt just loves you. And she lives down in Florida. She said, she loves you. And I said, well, get me her address, and I'll send her one, too. I'd be happy to. And she didn't say anything at that moment. But then as she came to go to lunch with us, she said, you're not going to believe this, but my father called right after I talked to you, and he gave me my aunt's address, which I didn't have before. And she said, isn't that a coincidence? And I said, that isn't any more of a coincidence than that we've been talking about this very thing right here for the last several hours here in the studio in Chicago today. That there is a connection, and that you'll see it when you believe it. And all I suggest to you is that you try it. If you pull into a gas station and somebody is right up ahead of you and they're parked in a place where you think you should be, and if they were only up at the pump a little further away, then you would be able to be happy and they would be able to be happy. Don't tell yourself that. See them as being exactly where they are, that you're connected to them, and treat them that way so that you don't treat them with anger. You accept it. It's always acceptance. It's openness and acceptance. What you do is you just pull up in front of them and back your car up a little bit and use that pump. Don't treat that person as if they were separate from you. Treat them as if they were a part of you, because they are. It's just that you can't see the perspective. You will be able to see that perspective. You'll get that when you leave this form that you're so attached to and go into another dimension. You'll see all of humanity as one. You are one of the pieces of this puzzle called humanity. And if you are missing from it, or if you're incomplete, or if you're not in harmony, then you make all of humanity incomplete. And that's exactly how important you are as a person. And if you just start thinking like that, that everybody out there that you run into is somehow in some way connected to you, you stop being antagonistic toward them, because you know that if you got antagonistic toward the microbes that live inside the lining of your large intestine and just didn't want them there and said, I'm going to do everything I can to get them out of there, that would kill you. You literally need that life, that I, that is we, the self-contained unit that is comprised of all of life. You have to have all of that. It's equally true on a different level for all of humanity. And you start seeing everybody like that. And before long, you'll start seeing the connections. They'll start being there, but only when you believe it.